Okay, home stretch. YouTube as cultural form. From 153 to 154, I do want you to pay attention to his rigor in terms of specificity, meaning what makes YouTube different from other platforms, the particularity, the specific character of YouTube videos, right? And then finally, the new problems they provide both legally and economically, right? Especially because of the fact that they're usually edited versions of previously existing content. On 155, where is it? Let's see. I can't really find. Oh, I mean, mistakes ultimately come down to rights, intellectual property rights, and advertising, right? Wait, what am I looking for? Oh, I'm on the wrong page, duh. Okay, so 155 is a pretty important page. Just a few lines throughout that page. First partial paragraph. Since YouTube's takeover by Google, not purchase, in 2006, the social practice of exchanging videos has gradually but notably changed from being community-based to being commercially based. How many of you remember that shift enough, or are you just familiar with its current form? But from after 2006, from just YouTube to Google, a transition from community to commerce. That is what a person who has literally written a book about YouTube has written. A little bit further down, what is clear though is that both broadcasters and homecasters like Google are after the same bounty. So both broadcast television and homecasters like Google or Hulu are after the same thing. Again, not a clean break. What? Attention from advertisers and users. That's what it comes down to. Over the past 5 years, established broadcast organizations have renegotiated their relationship with the new kids on the block. Again, they're not avoiding them. They're actually in business with them. Such as rapidly growing media mogul Google, not because they like this development per se, but because it is crystal clear that user-generated content that is self-produced video is a value-adding product attracting the interest of advertisers. Advertisers. A few lines down, a commercial asset whose value has not escaped the attention of advertising agencies. Advertisers. That's what this is about. Okay. From 155 to 156, they talk about, Van Dijk talks about how this is a kind of new paradigm, right? And he talks about YouTube and Home Depot in relation to one another. And the metaphor that he uses is that if I buy materials from Home Depot, and I get construction companies to help me with the construction of my house, I own that house. Neither Home Depot nor the home construction companies can tell me what I can do with that house. It's mine. Whereas on YouTube, if I produce something and I put it up, like this video, it's not really mine. They can tell me what to do with it. And that's why this is a sort of new frontier, right? The laws are still constantly in flux, constantly being negotiated. It's very similar to the way that people are talking about how the pandemic is raising existing issues infrastructurally about our society itself. Similarly, the new frontier of online media is getting us to question assumptions about media that we've had and other questions, like questions of private property and intellectual property and commerce that have always been there that we've just kind of glossed over, right? Okay. I think this is also on 156. But he talks about how the broadcast industry prays after new bounty. This is the second time, at least that I can remember. So, this is what is our relationship with media companies or conglomerates in general? I mean, and like, do they have our best interests in mind? Why is it that, so when I talk about like in your prompts where it's like you try and avoid value judgments, right? Try and avoid kind of that sort of language, right? Because it's like the job of critical, like the critical researcher is to kind of call it as it is, objectively and neutrally. If there's a critique to be made, it's made, but we're not making, attacks. So what does it mean that a research scholar basically says that a media company and the broadcast companies are predators, and that the relationship they have to the consumer is prey? I just want you to kind of like, this language is not clickbait language. It's not the sort of spectacular language that gets clicks, right? And gets read at all. But, if you think about what's actually being said, it's kind of incredible, right? And it's something that we should think about, I think. Right. Let's see. So this is still 156. While the broadcast industry is preying after a new bounty, they fiercely protect the turf that legally limits their own cultural form as the only standard in the business. So it's like they want that stuff too, but they're protecting their stuff and they're saying, this is the normal, this is the real, you guys are just copying anyway, but give me some of that. They have a vested interest in warding off competing forms because they need to point out that all other alternatives are mere derivatives of the only legitimate cultural form, legitimacy. Hegemony, these are certainly words. Normalcy, be suspicious of hierarchies, and be aware of the moment that you try and establish your own. Like, why? What are you doing, right? Because it benefits them, right? So the definition of a new socio-cultural paradigm implies an insistence on a different ideological or normative stance, right? If socially and culturally something shifts, what that means is that someone is setting up a new and trying to set up a new ideological and normative stance, right? So it's not something to just be excited about that, like, oh, YouTube is great and Netflix is great. In championing these things, inadvertently, there's a way in which we're also trying to set up a new normative paradigm that's also trying to sort of put the other stuff as illegitimate, right? It's not like the stakes of this stuff is not just simply, I love Netflix, I love Reed Hastings. That's not the only thing that's going on, right? And so, where does he say this? This is precisely why he's trying to argue for the need, right? Or why we need a nuanced model of thinking so that we're not participating in what is ultimately kind of a horrible sort of process. And in order to kind of reorient the paradigm in a way that's fair and just, right? Van Dijk is saying we need new language to reset that paradigm and equal the socio-cultural and economic values to make sure that it's all kind of balanced, right? Instead of on 156, instead of simply just sort of perpetuating old assumptions and frameworks, right? Don't just kind of keep peddling the tired old shit, right? Okay, so that's our introduction to YouTube. I'm kind of morbidly looking forward to the next reading just because, it's so sort of unnuanced and unsophisticated, but we'll see where that takes us. I'll talk to you then.